today's model question is a pair type of question. On one side you are given the plains, and the characteristic feature of these plains has been asked on the right side. Okay, so the plains which are given in the question, they are floodplains, lossless plain, the peneplains, and abyssal plain, right? So now let's take a look at each of these terms, what they mean. First of all, the floodplains. The floodplains, it means actually when a river is flooding, when a river is spilling, right? Spilling in the sense, here in this picture you can see the course of the river, right? When it is having more water, the water will spill to its banks, right? During that process, the water will be moving on to the plain regions, and that region we call it as floodplains, right? In these floodplains, the sediments carried by the flood water will get deposited, and this creates, or this gives fertility to the soil over the floodplain regions. Anyway, floodplain simply means the chances of the flood water to spill over these regions are more, or the plain regions where the sediments carried by the river which gets deposited during flooding, and that we call it as floodplains. Okay. And lossless plain or losses simply means thin layer of sediment deposit or thin layer of alluvium, right? So they are very fine in nature, right? Maybe these sediments can be created during the glacier period, during the abrasion, or mainly wind, or be it anything, right? Losses simply means they are very fine silt, very fine sediments, and these sediments gets carried along with the wind movement. When the wind blows, these sediments will get blown away along with the wind, and it will be deposited somewhere, right? So lossless plain means those plains having thin layer of alluvium in it, right? And they are mainly created because of the wind transporting the losses or this thin alluvium. But the wind is not creating the losses, rather than mainly the losses they are created by the glacier action, right? When the glaciers are moving, they will be grinding the sediments and they will be making them into very fine particles. And when the glaciers are melting off, these fine sediments will be carried and distributed around the world under the influence of wind movement. And such plain we call it as lossless plain. Now comes the abyssal plain, right? Abyssal plain means simply the layer of the plains, the layer of the sediments which are getting deposited over the oceanic floor, and that we call it as abyssal plain. In this picture you can see the coastal plain. Starting from the right, you can see coastal plain, and then you can see the continental shelf. The continental shelf regions, they are the shallowest oceans, shallowest regions in the ocean, right? Where the continent is merging with the oceans, right? A very gentle slope will be there, and the ocean will be shallowest there. Beyond the continental shelf, we are having the continental slope, where the slope is much higher, right? Beyond that, we are having the abyssal plain or the oceanic floor. So the fine sediments which are carried by the rivers draining into the ocean, they will be carried down towards the plain regions, will be deposited there. And such plains we call it as abyssal plain. So here you can see different continental slope and different landforms under the ocean. So abyssal plains, they are plains in the oceanic floor created by the deposition of fine silt. Okay. Now let's go back to the question. So the first statement, right, floodplain is marked with a plain largely composed of recent alluvium, which is true. Alluvium here means the sediments deposited by or carried by the river. So floodplain, a plain largely composed of recent alluvium. Why it is given specified as recent? Because when this flooding is taking place, the water will be spilled over these plains, sediment will be deposited there, making them relatively recent alluvial deposit, right? So the first one is correctly marked, and going through the options, you can eliminate C from it, right? Now the second one, lossless plain. Losses, as I said, they are thin level of the alluvium, right, or the sediments. So a level surface lightly covered with thin layer of alluvium, and that's exactly what we call by losses. And there's a tendency that lossless plain can be I mean, you can get confused with the lossless plane in the sense you might think the lossless plane, they are created only by the wind action, right? Mainly they are created by the wind action. But what we call by lossless plane is actually plains or like the level field covered with thin layers of alluvium, right? Mainly the losses they are produced because of the glacier action and they are carried by the wind or carried and deposited by the wind action. And the third one, peneplain. Now the peneplains, they are entirely related with the wind erosion, right? Now the wind will be having this abrasive power. Abrasive power means, erode away regions. Now in the regions having this wind erosion, what happens is that the wind will be abrading away the particles. So we will be having, say, some sedimentary mountains were here, right? I mean, soft mountains or something were here. And during the wind movement, these elevated region will get abrased away. They will be made into fine sediments. And such kind of plains created by the degradation resulted from the wind action. That plains we call it as peneplains. So here in this picture, you can see a structure which is not affected by the wind action, right? So all the regions around these elevated regions, they are eroded away or they are created because of the wind action. Now this elevated surface, it's hard rock. Now the wind cannot erode away hard rock, right? So that's why this structure is remaining. At the same time, at the other places, the peneplains are created. So peneplains, the plains created because of the wind action, and that we call it as peneplains. So in the option 3, right, peneplain is paired or matched with a deep sea plain, which is wrong. A deep sea plain is rather the abyssal plain, right? So going through the options, by knowing the 3 statements, we will be able to get into the answer. So we already found the first one as correct, so C is not there. Then the second one, lossless plane, is correctly matched with the thin layer of alluvium. So in the options it should be 1 and 2, right? And we can eliminate A. Now what left is B as well as D, and in the option D you can find 3 and 4. So if any one of the 3 or 4, if any one of those statements is wrong, the answer will be B, and if any one of those statements is right, the answer will be D, right? So here, since the peneplain is matched with a deep sea plain, which is wrongly matched, right? So the answer comes out as B. Okay. So peneplain created by the wind erosion, right? And abyssal plain, deep sea plain.